And I think we're live. Let's check it out. Make sure. And just making sure that we are actually live. Because, oh, there it is. Okay, good. All right, beautiful. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about because it's coming up to the busiest time of the year in terms of traveling. Even with the pandemic last year, it was still pretty active, and this year it's going to be even more so because everyone's really looking forward to get out to annoy their other family members. So definitely, this year is going to be a very active year for traveling. And this year we have a very interesting setup for the Monday, Tuesday time frame ahead of Thanksgiving. And we have a very active weather pattern. With that, I want to also point out I just got the hoodie, the NYNJPA weather hoodie that has been asked for. I just want to describe this because it's really soft, but it's warm. I'm actually getting a little warm, a little hot here because I got this bright light in front of me, so it's like vroom, like hot. So it definitely is going to keep you warm. It's very comfortable, and literally we got it like just an hour, but maybe like an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, at the door, and I'm like, yay! So I got my own little Christmas there. Oh yeah, then there's right in the back. Well, we have pictures, so we'll post pictures later. But we got the little decal here, and then it's on the back, and it's pretty sweet. So maybe I'll have a chance to show you it a little later, because I'm sure everyone is very interested in the evolution of our weather pattern, and the yeah, the volume too low, too low, too high. What is it? Oh, that's weird. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Can everyone else hear me okay? Let me know in the chat room. So you can hear it. I can hear it. Okay. All right. So apparently we're good. Volume's fine. Okay. Well, okay. So let me stop for a second and pull up the water vapor satellite picture. As you can tell, I'm a little excited about this whole pattern setting up because of what I am seeing here in the water vapor satellite picture. We can learn a lot about the upcoming cold front with our pattern. Ahead of last week at this time, we had this setup suggesting we would have a wave of low pressure and a major storm. And instead, what we ended up with, which is very clear now, is just a traditional cold front passage, which will give us some rainfall in the evening hours tomorrow evening, like let's say between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. over the region. Maybe about a quarter of an inch of rain. So far cry from what was originally being forecasted 7-8 days out. So why was there such a huge change? Because it's important to understand this error in all of the guidance to understand what is happening in our weather pattern and how the models are handling this. So the reason why we saw this change is because the model guidance was taking this part of the shortwave, cutting it off and turning it into an upper level low that created havoc. Now, what are we seeing now with the guidance for Monday, Tuesday? We are seeing kind of the same thing, but the models are kind of sticking to that idea. So here's our cold front for tomorrow evening to Friday. Nothing really major. Simple cold front, pretty strong cold air transport. Definitely some good lake effect snow coming off the eastern Great Lakes from Ohio all the way to western New York. So if you're around, let's say, Syracuse, Buffalo, your traditional lake effect snow areas, that's definitely going to be rocking. We'll talk about that if we get any questions on that. But the evolution of this, and let me pull the 12Z data from European, had this feature originally closing off and becoming an upper level low. Now that clearly isn't happening, right? So now we go to Monday, Tuesday, and look where it's trying to do again. It's trying to form an upper level low. Look what the GFS is doing. Right here. It's trying to form that upper level low. Pretty impressively. Now that's the 18Z guidance. Want to see something really cool? Take a look at this. Pull up the European 500 millibar heights. Starts to hint at doing the same thing. Starting to cut it off. So what is actually happening in the pattern? Well, our storm that we're keeping an eye on for Monday to Tuesday is actually right here, right around Alaska. And the problem is that once it enters up here in Canada, it starts to split and break apart and then re-evolves while it interacts with the polar vortex in the troposphere over central Canada. So that whole process leads to deconstruction and then redevelopment of this trough, which we could see really nicely when we take a look at, let's see, this data right here. Actually, there it is. Okay. Keep an eye on this feature right here. It weakens, becomes absorbed by this upper level low, shifts towards central Canada. There it is, diving south. So it gets absorbed, redevelops, repurposed, and drops south. Now, the ensemble guidance, we already saw what the GFS does. Let's take a look at what the GFS ensembles does with this. Interesting, huh? And now that is a heck of a drop here in the ensemble guidance. And in the ensemble GFS guidance, hints at the same thing. So what can we take from this? Well, there's a couple of themes here that I see in this setup that are really important to understand with the storm. First of all, with the blocking in the Atlantic, it definitely is screaming storm potential for this time period. At the same time, though, when you have this ridge axis pushing into the northern plains, that tends to push these storms a little bit further east. So this is going to be a fast-moving storm when it develops. So the question that we have to figure out is how fast does the shortwave redevelop and repurpose the PVA that's associated with this disturbance that is currently up here on the mid-Atlantic coast. The earlier solutions, which I thought were a little over the top, where you had this huge gale sitting right over New Jersey and then snow down in Washington, D.C., I didn't like it. I liked the idea of a storm, but I didn't like those details because it didn't fit this type of pattern when you have your ridge axis pushing east. But I do like the idea that Monday to Tuesday, there will be a redeveloping low pressure system. The reason why I said on social media, especially on Twitter and Facebook, that we'll have a really good idea of what to expect with this storm on Friday is that by that point, the process of going from this close upper level low to this feature right here will be very well forecasted. And by that point, we'll know exactly what to expect in terms of details. But one thing's for sure, we definitely can expect a strong cold front approaching on Monday, and then a low pressure system redeveloping along that cold front boundary. And then it's a question of whether it just is an impact on New England or the northern Mid-Atlantic and New England. In terms of impacts, given this type of pattern, coastal plains just rain, some strong winds, maybe some interior snowfall for the Poconos and Catskills, depending on how strong the cold air transport is. But one thing I would definitely keep an eye on, regardless of development, whether it's off the Delaware coast or in the Gulf of Maine, is strong lake effect snow leading up to Thanksgiving for basically off of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. That means Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York. So if you're traveling in those locations where your lake effect regions are, and also I'd keep an eye on the Poconos and Catskills for some impacts for the time period of Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday morning. So that's certainly something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I know, it's weird.
It's the hot coffee, I tell you all the time.
But the coffee's good, and it's the only way I'm able to stay awake, because it's hot coffee made out of this tumbler, which is really good and very hot. Wow. Yum. Okay, so.
Oh, jeez.
Well, where was I? Oh, yeah. Pardon me. 1 second. Okay, so allergies, fun times. Oh, God. Okay, so the overall theme in this pattern that we're seeing, setting up with the high latitude blocking that we're observing. Where was I? Oh, right here. Notice how this pattern kind of keeps refeeding itself with the negative NAO pattern, which is why I think that early December is definitely going to have the potential to produce here some active storms for the, especially for the interior, but also for the northern Mid-Atlantic. So with that, I am going to start answering your questions. And, whoa, it's very active over there. Okay, so first we'll deal with the premium. Okay. Let's see here. So first we got Chris Ernest, who is asking about the potential impacts for the cold front on Friday. Basically, we're looking at heavier showers more towards about the 8 p.m. to actually really more like 9 p.m. to midnight time period. So if I'm going to walk this through, this cold front is going to be producing some heavier showers probably right closer to midnight. And then after that, we'll have to watch out for the strong wind gusts. Now, what's interesting is I think that on Friday afternoon, don't be surprised if in the Poconos and Catskills you get some snow flurries out of that. Good evening, Card. Good evening, James. Let's see here. Joshua asks, do you see Northeast Ohio getting into good lake effect next week? They'll definitely have the potential. Whether your location actually gets the lake effect snow will pretty much depend on a lot of mesoscale factors in terms of the orientation of the winds and the short waves. But you definitely have that potential. And the reason why, we'll pull in the 850 millibar temperatures right here. You see this? When this starts marching its way in, That's going to open up the potential for some pretty good lake effect snow. Then we relax a little bit for the weekend. And then we have our next shot for next week. And this is going to really introduce in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, with the lakes so warm here, definitely that potential for lake effect snow in those regions, which is why I'm concerned for next week during leading up to Thanksgiving. I think by Wednesday you'll be okay, but I think Tuesday into Wednesday morning is going to be a rough period, I think, for some bands to develop. Then we kind of relax again and we watch our next storm. The same thing is true on the GFS guidance. We'll use the 12Z here. Basically showing the same scenario playing out. Let's see here. Good evening, Dave. Good, everyone can hear me. Rob asks, the negative NAO has definitely slipped further east on the last couple of model runs, which I am sure is helping to push things more east. That's a great point. Here, let me show you this. Okay, and it kind of goes into this whole pattern. Okay, so we're going to go to Wednesday night. You see this block here? Now, what Rob is pointing out is the orientation of this ridge. This would be considered a slightly displaced east negative NAO pattern. What you typically want to see is the NAO building all the way through Greenland. See this ridge? If you get this ridge in central Greenland, then that leads to storm tracking further east, and the block is should I say further west, and the block is further west. The reason why you're seeing this impact is because of what's going on in the Pacific. When you have your upper level low, and we'll go back here. When you have your upper level low focusing and drifting towards the Gulf of Alaska, that's going to displace this further to the east. If this upper level low dives down more towards the Aleutian Islands, then that allows this ridge to build into Greenland and sets up your pattern. So notice, as we get 10 days out, the ridge is pushed further into the Atlantic. And so this upper level low would be able to track up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley for early December, for like, let's say, November 29th through December 1st, rather than being forced to the East Coast. But notice, see how this is all baggy here? If this upper level low is focused more towards the Aleutians, then you would see this ridge build further to the west, which means that this upper level low would get forced towards the East Coast. So that's a very good pickup, Rob Allen, of that very important signature, and it's really important in terms of the overall pattern. It's something that we're going to be watching as we look at the rest of the winter. Now, we got a lot of questions here on YouTube. Let me just check it out. Let's see here. Wow. All right. Okay, I'm all the way at the top. Let's see here. Let's know Bud Lake, New Jersey. First inch when? That's a tough one. I would say probably around December 5th or 6th, somewhere in that ballpark. But that's the best guess I got. Let's see. Volume 5, volume good. Sounds good here. Hello, Kenneth. After Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving and after Thanksgiving Day itself and after Thanksgiving is actually looking really good. Tranquil weather is going to be expected. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think the leading up to Thanksgiving, the Monday through Wednesday morning time period is where it's really going to be your stormiest. But Wednesday afternoon through Thanksgiving itself, beautiful. And also Black Friday, if that's still a thing, will also be pretty quiet as well. How windy will it get next week? I'm thinking on Tuesday that based on what I'm seeing with the 850 millibar winds, and let me pull that up here. Based on what I'm seeing here, I would say that we have a pretty good shot of 35 mile per hour gusts. So there's certainly something that we're going to be keeping an eye on with that. Now back to the premium chat area. Will Cleveland area get lake effect snow next week? Already talked about that. Shortwave interaction and storm development. It looks like at 250 millibar jet has split with some really roaring sections. We'll go to Earth News School. Already got that pulled up here. So this configuration is very interesting because we can literally see the 3 jet stream dynamics here. Here's your subtropical jet stream with influence from La Nina. Here is your polar jet stream. And then here's your Arctic jet up here. Now, the interaction of all these features is what leads to our storms. What I find very interesting is how amplified all of these jet streaks are. Okay, there is some pretty good amplification in this pattern overall, and we haven't even started to push into winter yet. And we're already starting to see some pretty well established high latitude blocking as well. This is a very important aspect to this pattern. We're going to be entering patterns where we're going to have the high latitude blocking set up and everything looks like it's going to be playing out. But the short waves are not interacting just right. And there's going to be a lot of phantom storms 10, 15 days out. Because of that, I'm instituting my rule not to trust any type of storm development or details on storm potential until we get to 120 hours out. And this is why. Because you have all of these jet streaks interacting and all these short waves within these jet streaks interacting that can lead to a lot of volatility and a lot of chaos in the model guides handling those various interactions. So what you end up with is a lot of storms that are typically overamplified, that create a lot of unrealistic scenarios. So what we've seen the past basically 10, 12 days of storms showing up in the guidance 7 to 10 days out, but then disappearing, is a symptom of the model guidance trying to handle all these different short waves. Eventually, they will pick up an actual storm, and that actual storm will form. But until we get that interactions lock in, and then that sets up the train in the next 2-3 storms, we have to wait for that point. But when it happens, it's going to happen in a big way. What coffee flavor? French vanilla again? No, this is caramel. Caramel coffee. Caramel vanilla coffee. My shift ends at 10 p.m. in Philadelphia tomorrow. Well, then you should be getting out just in time before that rainfall hits, Chris. What does Thanksgiving Day look and the day after Thanksgiving? Right now, it's actually looking pretty nice. Let me pull up the latest model guidance. We could use the European, GFS, doesn't matter. They both are basically showing the same thing. That the day of Thanksgiving, you have generally high pressure and control. And then Friday afterwards, high pressure is in place. We are watching this storm out here. I don't trust the details or the upper level low on this just yet. But I do think that it's a storm that given the way that the high latitude blocking is setting up, that the core of it would track up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley. When do you see below normal temperatures lock in for a stretch? I don't. I don't expect that, Joshua. And the reason why is that, as I explained with La Nina patterns, cold air masses, polar and Arctic air masses, and La Nina patterns for the northern mid-Atlantic, and I guess you can also include the eastern Great Lakes on this, but they typically are transient, okay? What you typically have, what that means is that the cold air comes in and then it retreats. And it's retreating because there's this constant battle between the ridge, the southeast ridge in the subtropical jet stream, and the polar and Arctic air masses that are pooled in Canada and the northern plains. And we are in the battle zone between those two conflicting features. Now, in an east-based La Nina, what typically happens is that the ridge is focused more towards the Bahamas rather than the central and eastern Gulf Coast. So you have a better chance for that cold air to build in. But I still will, in La Nina patterns, I stay away from the idea of a locked-in, sustained below normal regime. But if you're looking for near normal to slightly below normal and constant cold fronts, basically the end of November, which we're approaching, into early December is our first stretch of that type of weather pattern until we get a relaxation in the middle of the month and then redevelopment once again. Rob asks, just out of curiosity, I noticed you never used the model comparator from weather models on your videos or live chat to help illustrate trends thoughts further. Any particular reason why? No, not really. I just not really used it that much. I guess I could if I wanted to. I just never really bothered to. Here, let's pull it up here. I mean, I could definitely create some features out of that, like this part right here for. Well, that didn't work out too well. It's pulling up the 18Z data. But yeah, I mean, I could use it. It's just a matter of setting it up, I guess, if I wanted to. I'll tell you what, the next time that we have a live chat, which, by the way, is going to be on next Tuesday rather than Wednesday, just to deal with the travel and whatnot. So we'll have it on Tuesday evening. I'll send an email out just to remind you guys. I'll try to set that up, and we'll use that next time. We got a question on YouTube. Let's see here. I know statistically our chance of a white Christmas are less than 10%. That's right. But do you think chances are higher this year considering the expected storm pattern? Okay. I would say that if we get disruption of the polar vortex, let's say in mid-December, that the chances of a white Christmas will increase, but I wouldn't put my savings on it, okay? Getting a white Christmas is incredibly hard. If you want to see a white Christmas, you want to go to the upper Midwest and the northern plains. That's where you always have a white Christmas. Great Lakes too. But the northern mid-Atlantic, there are too many factors to go against you to get that quote-unquote white Christmas. But if we get that configuration, if we see this redevelopment of the negative NAO again towards the end of December, you got a pretty good shot. I just don't want to get anyone's hopes up saying, oh yeah, we're definitely going to have a white Christmas. Because I know, I mean, if you have a base of 10%, you know, not exactly the best scenario to be in. Rob asks, I've been seeing a lot of chatter and data that the SPV is modeling stronger over the past week. Do you agree with this, and does this cause a shutdown period during December? Stratospheric polar vortex, by the way, is SPV. Okay, so let's take a look what's happening here with the observations, because observations are king. Now, when I'm looking for disruption in the polar vortex, I'm looking at Asia. Why am I looking at Asia? Because Asia is where I want to have this warm bubble really establish itself to invade the Arctic to disrupt the polar vortex. Every time we see a rapid buildup here, it leads to a disruption of the polar vortex. You can sometimes see it around Greenland as well. But the reason why we're seeing a stronger polar vortex in the Maldives is because we had a weak disruption. Now it's re-intensifying where we're getting some of this colder air mixing in. And again, this is at 10 millibars. So this would support a stronger stratospheric polar vortex here, this signal right here. But we have this factor right here that tells us more potential for weakening is around the corner. And what I'm always watching right now is this. This is called the EVP transport. Okay, EP flux. Okay, what this does is show me how air in the mid latitudes is being transported up towards the Arctic or towards the higher latitudes in the stratosphere. So this is a troposphere down here, and then this is the stratosphere up here. And the stronger these vectors are, the stronger the transport is. Now, in years where we don't see a lot of disruption, these vectors are pretty weak. They kind of look like this. But when they're strong, like what we're seeing here, let me zoom in here. You see this? These are very strong vectors. This means that air at the mid latitudes and also the tropics are being transported up into the atmosphere from the troposphere to the stratosphere. That is how and why we are getting this signal. See how everything's interacted? So, yes, I do see strengthening, and that's pretty clear on the model guidance. I mean, you can use this guidance here, 10 days out, clearly strengthening. You can use the GFS ensemble guidance. It matches up pretty well physically. Makes a lot of sense. But let's take a look at this signal in terms of the temperature anomalies. There's our cooling. Now, when I'm looking at this guidance, see this area right here? Here, watch this. You see how this is getting stronger? That is going to be your next major warming. Coming right out of, let's say, Korea and China. And it's going to blossom here, I'd say December 5th, 6th. I would not be surprised we see that blossoming take place. And that's going to wallop this polar vortex. Why do I think that's happening? Because of what I'm seeing in the observations right here. This has to stand out sooner or later. It takes some time. There's a lag time to this, but this is going to stand out. This transport is going to have an impact. Now, another question on YouTube. Siberian snow cover is above normal. And that takes me to another point, which is our snow cover over all of the northern hemisphere. We started out November. This is October 31st snowfall, right? And it was below normal over North America. Since then, we have rapidly started to increase. So here we are November 10th. And this is a big warning sign. Hey, this is well below normal in Canada. It's going to mess up our air masses. Meanwhile, Siberia is above normal. It ended up above normal for October. But take a look. what happens as we go forward here. We'll get to the 17th. This is updated. We went from well below, here we are well below, to now above. We flipped it over the Northern Hemisphere. We flipped it over North America. We went from well below to now slightly above. I think that's going to continue to increase. And the reason why that's really important is because when you have a sustained snowpack in Canada and plenty of strong one in Siberia, that makes your polar and Arctic air masses stronger. The fact we're seeing a rapid increase in jumping from below to above tells me that the pattern is evolving in such a way to support more snowfall over eastern North America. And yes, that also means the northern mid-Atlantic. So this was a very, very interesting trend, and we haven't even gotten into our lake effect snow season yet, which I think is going to really, really produce as we move forward over the next 10 days. Card also seems that the heat transport from the tropics or polar regions isn't stopping anytime soon. Exactly right. That's exactly the point. That's exactly it. The more that transport happens, the more likely you're going to see the disruption of the polar vortex. Card, thanks. No stormy weather. Thanksgiving Day is great, and likely going to Borgata on Friday after. Card, when do you not go to Borgata? That's the real question. Because I know that place is good. Again, they don't like me there because I know how to count cards, and they get very, very annoyed with me. But hey, I had to do what I had to do for my brother's bachelor party. But that is a very fun place, and yes, you shouldn't have any weather impacts whatsoever for your time there. Those were some impressive storms last weekend with the hail and tornadoes. Yeah, those storms were a perfect example of what happens when you have a strong shortwave involved. And here's the thing that we can learn from that shortwave, right? 48 hours out ahead of that event, model guidance did not pick up the intensity of this shortwave. It was strong, it would support heavy showers, but nothing like the hailstorms that we saw, nor the tornadoes. I'd say even 24 hours out, there was still some questions like, okay, looks like this is going to be more convective in nature. We started to see more support for maybe some convective precipitation, but tornadoes, no, that's a sign of just how vigorous the polar shortwaves can get in this pattern. And it's a warning sign against letting your guard down when it comes to the situation that we're in, where these shortwaves are diving in and they're interacting and they have the potential of cutting off into upper level lows. So we saw what happens when the model guidance does not sample these shortwaves correctly, and how we have to play catch up and keep a very, very careful eye on our water vapor satellite picture. Was there any surprise as to how strong the storms were last night? I was certainly surprised. Friday, I had no inkling that I'd be talking about tornadoes on Saturday. None. That's the honest truth. When I woke up on Saturday morning and took a look at the water vapor satellite picture and saw the divergence and diffluence involved, I was shocked. I was very surprised that we had this type of negative tilt already showing up. So when I saw that, premium members will know that I rewrote the entire severe threat analysis based on what I was seeing, and put that out as quickly as possible. Of course, there was also the SPC started to also notice some things, put out like 2% chance of a tornado. It definitely definitely caught me by surprise when I saw it on Saturday morning how vigorous that shortwave was. Because when you have a negative tilt, what that does is that it stretches the atmosphere out to the north and east of that tilt, which basically aligned with basically north central New Jersey on through Long Island. So when you have that stretching in the atmosphere and vertical wind shear, that opens up the potential for hail and frequent lightning and thunderstorms with the potential for tornadoes. And then, of course, you had your strong winds after that because they were mixing down the strong 850 millibar winds to the south and west of that trough axis. So, definitely a very active day, far stormier than I thought it was going to be when I was writing the forecast on Thursday and Friday. That is for sure. Let's see here. Would be nice to see the balloons not be an issue for a change. Yeah, that's true. I think that the Thanksgiving Day parade for Macy's is going to be absolutely fine. It's going to be very enjoyable, and Santa will not have any problems whatsoever in New York City. Uh, Anything grabbing your attention as to sea surface anomalies and trends going forward? Yes, thank you for asking that card. Indeed, there is. We are seeing a rapid drop in sea surface temperatures in the eastern zones of La Nina. Take a look at this. In the long range thoughts on Tuesday, I talked about how a Kelvin wave is going to enhance this La Nina for a very short period of time, kind of give it a nice little jolt. I compared it to taking a pre-workout, right? You get that pre-workout and you're like jazzed and you're ready to lift and you think you can like bench press 600 pounds because you're just amped and ready to go, right? Well, La Nina just took a pre-workout and basically, and let me actually pull up the subsurface real fast here because I want to show you where it's taking here it is. Okay, so these temperatures are pretty chilly, and you see the Kelvin wave is lifting this area of cold water towards the surface, but it's heading it towards the eastern zones. So this is causing the eastern zones to rapidly cool, while the western zones of La Nina, not really at all. Nino 4 is barely in La Nina state. Nino 3.4, which most people focus on, is a weak La Nina state. Nino 3 is a weakest going on moderate La Nina. And Nino 1 plus 2, that's definitely a moderate La Nina signal. Now, you never want to jump the gun in saying, okay, the sea surface temperatures automatically equals XYZ La Nina. What you want to do is take this and then compare that to how the atmosphere is responding to this evolution. So let's see here. SOI. So what you want to do is study the SOI. The SOI is the difference in pressure. So let me refresh this real fast. See if we got any new data. Okay. So the daily contributions is where you get your greatest fluctuations. This can be influenced by the MJO phases, or if the MJO is neutral, the overall state of the atmosphere, which is a La Nina influence. So you typically see these rapid rises and drops in the daily values, which we could see right here. But the monthly and seasonal values, 30 days and 90 days, this gives you a far more clearer analysis of what the El Nino or La Nina evolution is doing to the atmosphere. So a strong La Nina would give you, let's say, plus 20, plus 30, something like that. Moderate La Nina, say around plus 15. A weak La Nina is usually between plus 8 and plus 10. So we're seeing in the monthly values 5.8, which is below that plus 8. So that's pretty weak in the monthly values. The seasonal values, about 9.25. and that's been strengthening a bit. This factor would suggest that overall we have a weak La Nina state. I go by this more so than the sea surface temperatures because this gives me a true measure of how the atmosphere is reacting. Sea surface temperatures change all the time for a variety of different reasons. But if you get a pretty good idea of how the pressure gradient is aligned, which gives you an idea of the convection, which would explain your MJO state, and this signature right here. So the state of the SOI would explain why we keep on seeing convection right around the date line, even in a La Nina state. See, that's how everything's connected. When someone just says, well, the sea surface temperatures are X, Y, and Z, ask what is the forcing mechanism doing on the atmosphere? Like, how is it influencing the atmosphere? And if they don't bring up the SOI, they're not telling you the full story. So the fact that we're seeing our coldest anomalies in the eastern zones pretty much locks in the idea that this is an east-based Moduga La Nina, and this spike is not going to last very long because guess what? Let's see. You see this cold water here? Also see it right here, nice anomaly there. This is weakening. And the reason why that's important is that after this shot that comes through, La Nina weakens from here on out. That Kelvin wave probably is the last hurrah in terms of potentially strengthening this La Nina. And it ended up strengthening the eastern zones and in the most volatile area and least impactful area, Nino 1+2. So that has caught my eye for sure. Let's see. Len asks, hi Steve, do you know if the atmospheric conditions last Saturday, during the tornado outbreak on Long Island were similar to the conditions setting up the big tornado outbreak in New Jersey in late July? There were some components that were similar, like the short waves were both intense. The vertical wind shear was both intense. The event in late July was much better forecasted. We saw that coming a mile away. We saw that evolution taking place. We didn't know the exact details, but we knew that something was up. 2 days out, we were talking about, hey, this looks like a pretty significant event. The SPC was on it, very much so. This event last Saturday, we were pretty much playing catch up on Saturday morning, going from, yeah, it looks like a strong shortwave to, holy jeez, this thing is really going into a negative tilt. We have to play catch up on Saturday morning. So I think the event on July was better forecasted, and you had more lead time to get the forecast out than we did on Saturday. So that's definitely how I see it in terms of that pattern evolution. Let's see here. Yes. No, I'm checking out the YouTube real fast. That would have been one of those surprise 12-inch snowstorms. That was intense. Yes, exactly. That's the point I'm making here. These short waves in the polar jet stream, and why I'm concerned about just letting my guard down for the Monday, Tuesday time period, is that these short waves, when they're interacting with this upper level low, pull this back up here. When it's starting to do this interaction right here on Thursday, tomorrow evening, okay? When it starts going through this process, what I do not know right now is how strong does this remain? Does it get completely crushed? Or does it sustain some sort of semblance that as it's diving towards the northern plains, that it's stronger than what's being suggested here? is this feature here more dynamic, and then therefore we're playing catch up on Sunday night and Monday than what's being shown here. Because thus far, this fall, these short waves have ended up being stronger than what was actually forecasted. So again, we could end up with the situation we're dealing in now where the short wave that comes through here, it doesn't dig as much, and so therefore we just get a regular cold front passage. But I am seeing this signal, this stretching, far too much because of this blocking here, showing up far too many times in the guidance to ignore it. Which is why I'm being very, very careful and not just dismissing it out of hand. Okay, I do not, the worst thing, I'd rather give you the heads up and be wrong than try to blow off a storm and then we're playing catch up and you're caught out on I-95 in the middle of a 3-inch heavy rainfall event with strong winds, and then changing over to snow. You know, I don't want to put you guys in that situation. So we're going to be watching this very carefully. Let's see here. Card says, I think that the July event was the highest tornado threat for a non-tropical system that I recall. Yep, it certainly was. It certainly was. Do you see any potential for any Boxing Day type storms the next month or so? Well, that's a good question. Not the same evolution, because that evolution was driven by a strong short wave in the subtropical jet stream interacting with a weaker polar short wave. You know what I'd probably keep an eye on? A clipper that bombs out over the coastal waters. Why do I say that? Well, we already know that we're dealing with strong short waves, and we also have very warm waters over the Western Atlantic. So when you get these warm waters here, that means the air is rising. So it sets up cyclogenesis far easier. And when you have an Arctic air mass diving in, it tends to lead to very strong frontogenesis, which basically means a strong thermal gradient, which means that you can get a low pressure system rapidly intensifying. I'd keep an eye on the potential for a clipper causing some mischief, which goes back to our question about White Christmas. Okay, so the winter forecast has been issued to the public, and this is what the overall theme is this. If we get sustained high latitude blocking driven by the disruption of the polar vortex, then we are going to have a very, very stormy winter, and one that is going to make a lot of people very tired of snow by the middle of February. I don't want to overhype this. This whole winter, the make and break of this winter is going to be that development of the polar vortex and whether it gets disrupted. If it gets disrupted, combined with the weak east-based La Nina that I'm looking at for the rest of this winter, then I am going to be one very busy meteorologist, and we are going to be tracking some pretty impressive snow events. If the polar vortex remains strong, let's just say hypothetically that we get an evolution here where the transport from the tropics collapses, which I'm not expecting, but let's say it does, and the stratosphere cools and the polar vortex strengthens and remains strong, then it would be a very quiet winter. My point is that the winter is going to hinge on the evolution of the polar vortex, which, in terms of our science, we have a so-so record in forecasting the evolution of the polar vortex. But if this thing breaks up like I think it will and gets stretched and disrupted, then I think that December, January, February are going to be very busy months for us. So that's how I kind of see that. Was that a hockey rink? What? Will it be worthwhile to say? I think that is the weirdest question I've ever got. Set up a backyard. How would you set up a backyard hockey rink?
I follow somebody on Instagram that does it every year.
How do you set up a backyard ice rink?
There's a lot of prep in it.
What, like you use a pool?
No. I'll show you later.
What? Man, that is some dedication right there. That's like building your own football field. Like get like all the markers out and everything. That's impressive. How do you even pull that off?
It is dedication, I will say that.
But I don't think it's going to be cold enough to support that. Because don't you need to keep the temperatures at steady in order to create...
Steady freezing temperature?
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't work. You have to have another mechanical device in order to keep that rolling. Okay, wow, it is already 8:56. I still got more coffee to drink, but I think we're going to call up for a night. I think we've gone over. I think anyone else have any other questions about the upcoming week? We will be having another live chat instead of Wednesday on Tuesday. So that way, anyone who's traveling...
Okay, they have another question.
What's that? Let's see here.
Same person.
Will we have sustained temperatures below freezing? No, I can say that with... In the northern mid-Atlantic, it is incredibly difficult, even for the higher elevations, to have sustained below freezing temperatures in the northern mid-Atlantic. We're in the temperate zone. That's really hard to pull off. Okay, that'd be... If we sustained below freezing the entire winter, it'd be one of the coldest winters we've had around here. Okay, I'm not even talking about climate change, all that stuff. We're talking about like 1888 type cold. Okay, one of the cold that's like the type of cold where where we had the year without summer, that type of cold because of a volcano. So no way. Speaking of football, any interest football weather Sunday? Go Cowboys. I don't think so. Go Chiefs. Chiefs are going to win that one. The Chiefs are going, let me tell you something. Patrick Mahomes has woken up, and he has woken up like Godzilla waking up from a nice nap after he got struck by lightning because the people there decided to wake him up, and now he's all pissed off. Well, that is Patrick Mahomes. He's going to tear apart the National Football League now. But talking about the weather for Sunday, overall, not too bad. It's actually pretty quiet out there. I'm not really seeing any type of major impacts. Could be some snowfall around Green Bay. I don't think that they play at home. I don't think so. Texas is going to wish they had an Arctic blast or something to slow down the Chiefs, but that isn't happening. No, overall, no major weather impacts, I think, for the football games. I think we're okay. We only get that kind of cold when we get... Yes, exactly. Casey actually does have a defense. You're going to learn that very much this weekend. They have a very good defense. You watch. Let's see here. Thanks. I am a huge fan of your work. Thank you, James. I really appreciate it. Okay, so that is it for tonight. Again, if you're interested in this hoodie, NYNJPA weather, it's on the website. Definitely check that out. You can click the link on that. We will be back next week on Tuesday, so that way we could give the latest updates on any travel plans. If you have any questions about traveling, we will cover that. We're not doing it on Wednesday because I will be trying to get into the kitchen, tasting all the food that Susan's making while Susan throws something at me. So probably not best to do that on a live chat. So we'll be back next Tuesday. Food prep. That means I'll be tasting all the food. So we will be back next Tuesday. Thank you again for visiting and chatting. And as always, stay safe out there.